We are going to get started then, so we'll start with a prayer. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this time together here to continue to break open your word. We ask that you help us be mindful of all those who are particularly oppressed or in hardship. We ask you to help us be mindful for them and their sufferings. We ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen. The Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. St. Thomas. So questions this week in general before we jump in. We're finishing plagues, sort of.
I had a little bit of a hard time understanding what was going on between God and Moses and Pharaoh. It was confusing at times. Who's speaking who and when?
Who's speaking to whom and when? It does get a little bit... It can get a little murky when it's a he and a him, and you're losing track of, is this God dealing with Pharaoh, or is it Moses and God dealing with the other, or is it Pharaoh and Moses face to face? You have to pay close attention to what was the last set of names given. It's like reading, sometimes it's like reading Paul, where there's no punctuation, and chapter after chapter it's he, him, and you're like, was he Jesus, or was it the Holy Spirit, or is it the Father? I've lost track. So there are some times, because of the way, especially the texts have been pieced together, it's a little choppy. The seams show between E and P more than they do between E and J. It's a totally different style. And so it's going from a slightly kind of formal speech of every day to formal liturgical language. I would not say the word vouchsafed in private conversation with anyone, but I have to use that stupid word a lot in liturgies. You vouchsafed for, like, come up with another word. Formal terms, they have their setting. The priestly authors use much more formal language, and so it gets kind of lofty, and you can miss the transition. What was the conversation, and did we switch gears? Is this a totally different plague sometimes? And there are a few times it gets a little confusing.
Yeah, these three chapters were actually 10 was a little bit more choppier than...
Yes. 10 is... 9 is mostly E. It's mostly with a little bit... 10, ironically, is mostly the same author, but... he himself, that chapter is it's just juxtaposing things a little. It's trying to shove things in an order that they almost don't want to be in, but they're trying to follow a pattern of like water, earth to sky, and making things that wouldn't follow necessarily a logical order. So it does get a little, 10's order gets a little choppy. And then 11 just turns into getting you ready for the final plague, but there's a long gap. Because the 9 just happened, the 10th, we need preparation.
The other thing that is because it goes so quickly between Pharaoh and Moses, and it seems like that there should be more time in between.
Yeah.
Just was wondering, because things do happen and it takes time to take effect.
Well, yes, but think of it this way. You'd like it to, you would like the back and forth to take more time so you can follow it, so that everyone gets a chance to get on board. How often do fights in your house ever happen on a logical sequence? It's just stuff blows up. You get in a fight, and then this person's going to be, and people start hurling things, and you're like, what the hell are you talking about? That happened 35 years ago. It doesn't matter. I'm still angry about it. It doesn't always follow a continuum when a fight is happening. Moses and Pharaoh and God and Pharaoh are fighting, and the tension sometimes is very raw, and neither one is leaving the other one even time to answer, other than tomorrow. A lot of tomorrow, but that's not a lot of time to process. So by the time we get to the last plague, there's all right, get ready. Here it is. It's horrible. that one you need a little time to prep for. But as these other plagues are happening, it's quick, it's fast. These could have all taken place in just a matter of a couple weeks. Or did they happen over months? We'll never know. But the bare minimum is it could have taken place over the course of 2.5 or 3 weeks. This could have been very quick. We'll never know. They don't put a time in it.
Yeah.
Does
Yes?
Pharaoh himself ever personally get affected by these plagues? I mean, like when they talk about the boils and so forth, it didn't sound like he was affected.
Yes and no. He's affected by them, but we're never entirely sure how much. Like, does he have the boils himself and we won't hear about it? Is he one of the everyone's included, or everyone's coming to him and he doesn't because he's a god and he's immune? Who knows? It's never entirely written out, but they affect his people, so they affect him. Some of them do affect him, like the frogs are all over him, the lice are all over, flies. Some of them, we're not sure about the boils. It's murky. Did he have them or not? There are clues in there. Sometimes it seems like he does, and others you're like, I don't know if he does. So, other questions? Yes.
Probably rhetorical because of the way it's written, but it seems like it would have been more prudent of Moses at some point to say, I'll remove them as soon as we get off your property. Instead of removing them before we leave.
No, because I see what you're saying. The question is, wouldn't it make more sense if he says, it'll all go away once we leave? We would like to have the lock in. He knows God's going to deliver, but Pharaoh has to be party to it. If Pharaoh doesn't really let us go, then we aren't gone freely. So, to do the trick, we'll pray for you that the boils go away once we're out. Well, he's not going to let you go out until the boils are gone. So, Moses in good faith is praying to God, God lifts it, and then Pharaoh hardens his heart. So, yes?
Why do there have to be so many? Why can't they go from the first one to the last one? Why all these
Which seems to be a question, is that the case of what happens in J? Because the 10 plagues don't exist in the earliest text as we can find it. Either they've been taken and so rewritten by everyone else later, as we have, or that author didn't have all of these plagues. They're part of a later tradition, and he just has, God showed signs, slew the enemy, but most importantly, drowned them in the ocean. That was more important for the first version of the story, is the army is destroyed by the sea. That water that threatened us with destruction, like in the Nile, is now destroying Pharaoh. So it all forms a complete package for them. Later authors, because here's the thing, because when you want to show how powerful your God is, you don't want him to have just one trick. You want to show he's got control over everything. Birds, water, animals, locusts, the light and dark. God can control a lot of things, which seems to be why there are so many of them. And just to give you that pattern of, after a while, Pharaoh, smarten up. Because after 2 or 3, you're like, okay. But after 8, 9, at that point, you're like, it's a losing battle. Even his own people, and we'll see that, even his own people start to turn on him later in the plagues. So the reason there are so many is to show you how completely stubborn this Pharaoh is, and he just doesn't learn. And our God can keep coming at him, and keep coming at him, and keep coming at him. And since a later generation is telling us, especially the priestly author, when they're in captivity in Babylon for 40 years, you don't get to go home right away. So the idea of things taking a while God working over a long period of time helps you understand he may not be answering us right now, but it's coming.
Thank you.
Good question. Others? Yes.
They keep on saying that God hardens Pharaoh's heart.
Yeah. Again,
Doesn't Pharaoh have a free will?
well, that was the argument last week. This was the whole question is it God doing all of the acting, as some of the authors want to make it, that God is in absolute control even of Pharaoh's response? Or others who say Pharaoh strengthens his heart himself, or closes his heart. The terminology is him doing it himself. So the question is he a puppet in God's hands, or is he an actor with free will, or is he something in between? The way it's preserved with both of those included seems to read in the modern ear that God's made him in a way that he knows how he's going to respond when confronted with certain things, and it's just going to harden his heart. But Pharaoh himself will also be responding with his own free will to do that. However, when God refuses to accept, when Pharaoh refuses to accept God, there's also the classic theological argument, the grace of God that any natural being would have to assist in natural reasoning is withdrawn from Pharaoh at that point because he's rejecting what little of God he knows. So he doesn't even have reason on his side. So all of his choices are irrational. So God hardens his heart by removing the spirit so he cannot make good decisions and he will never choose well. That's a more modern interpretation. I think it's a little theologically heavy-handed. I like it, but it is a little heavy-handed for the text. But don't quote me in a court. Other questions? Yes.
So even with all the plagues and Pharaoh hardening his heart, isn't this also like a prelude as to what the Jewish people are going to do for the next 40 years, as well as the rest of mankind?
What? No, actually, what it is setting you up for is, as you're reading it, you start to think, Pharaoh is the dumbest person who's ever lived. That after 9 of these plagues, 9 of these contests, he doesn't smart enough to realize, I can't beat this God. The only foreshadowing in here is, you would think the Israelites learned, this God is awesome when he fights for us, but don't ever get him mad.
Maybe we shouldn't do a golden.
Maybe we shouldn't pray to other gods like a cow, yeah. And you would think they'd learn their lesson, and the book has it that no. So the Exodus doesn't end, the story doesn't end the minute they leave Egypt.
Right.
It continues only, now the stupid player is Israel itself. Israel is just as stupid and hard-hearted as Pharaoh. So in the beginning, it's a story to unite us all as one people, and yeah, we're the underdog, and yeah, Pharaoh's trying to conquer us. But then it turns into, we ourselves are stupid and hard-hearted. We didn't learn the lessons of God fighting for us. So now, when we're the victims, of God just being really cruel, it's the approach of, think of yourself as being a kindergartner. But think of it this way. When your mom or dad goes into school and yells at the teacher because they've done something really horrible and singled you out, and you're like, yeah, get her, she's a jerk. Then you go home, and now you're in trouble for doing something stupid. My parents just aren't fair. Well, when they're fighting for you, they're the greatest people ever. And when they're punishing you, they can go to hell because what are you doing? It's the same thing. They're trying to weed out injustice on both sides. Sometimes you'll benefit, sometimes you won't. But God, the parents being consistent, God's being consistent, it's we who are inconsistent. And that's a beauty of this book and this whole story. And actually, the whole Bible is God is perennially there as a loving God who wants what's right, but has to deal with children who are stupid and obnoxious and entitled and argumentative, who want everyone else crushed under God's heel the minute they do something wrong, and the minute we do something wrong, why would you come after us? There's a sense of, I cannot see in my own life the flaws that I see in someone else's. Jesus will pick up on this theme beautifully. Remove the plank in your own eye. But, he'll pick up on that as a theme of his ministry of, we're very good at telling everyone else what's wrong with them, but we're the ones who are wrong. It's what's inside the vessel, not the outside, that makes it unclean. And that's the irony of this book, is it starts with this text of God's fighting for them. And you'd think not only Pharaoh would learn a lesson, but surely the Israelites would. No one's learning any lessons. We've got to go through masters and PhD programs by the time we're out, and they still die in the desert because they haven't learned their lesson, and it's another generation picking up. It does kind of show you the stupidity of human nature. We're very good to point out what's wrong in somebody else, but we don't want to see it in ourselves. And I kind of like that in this book, that it's universal, that both sides are wrong. Just because the person you're fighting is wrong doesn't make you right. I always tell this to couples I'm prepping for marriage, especially if they had parents who were divorced, and they're like, well, we're not going to be anything like our parents, so we're not going to get it. And I'm like, just because you're the opposite of what your parents were doesn't mean you're not going to get a divorce. It means you'll get a divorce for a completely different reason. Your marriage will fail if you aren't working on the relationship, you're not working on the relationship. So don't say it's this that'll ruin it. It's a lot of factors. So just because you do the opposite of somebody else doesn't mean you'll be a success if they were a failure. You just fail for a completely different reason. The Egyptians and the Israelites fail for completely different reasons. You all get an F, but their bonus questions were right somewhere, but they didn't answer the same ones. So it's an interesting dilemma we face in this text. Other questions? All right, we're going to jump into chapter 9. So we're on the fifth conflict, disaster, or plague. So Yahweh said to Moshe, "Come to Pharaoh and speak to him. Thus says Yahweh, the God of the Hebrews. Send free my people that they may serve me." It's God's greatest hits. It's God. I'll give it a 7. I can dance to it.
Is that God speaking
Yes.
to Pharaoh or to Moses?
It's God speaking through Moses to Pharaoh.
Okay.
Yes.
So that, okay.
Saying, set my people free. And he goes on, if you refuse to send them free and continue to hold on strongly to them, here, Yahweh's hand will be on your livestock in the field, on the horses, on the donkeys, on the camels, on the oxen, and on the sheep, an exceedingly heavy pestilence. Stop. This is the dead center of all the plagues, and it's animals.
Yeah, I wonder why the animals?
Why the animals? Good question. Why the animals?
It's their livelihood.
Partly,
Well, it's their life.
Pharaoh's real livelihood, the real livelihood of Egypt throughout all of ancient history, is grain. They are the wheat basket of the world before the American Great Plains. Before France takes over and the U.S. takes over producing grain, in ancient times it's Egypt. They make their money on grain. However, by the way, it's going to be destroyed. Don't worry. But why animals? This is important. Who's speaking? God, the God of?
Abraham, Isaac.
I am the God of the Hebrews, he just said. I'm going to strike your animals. This is very, very important, coming from the mouth of Moses, the spokesperson for the God of Israel in Pharaoh's court, to Pharaoh. Animals? No, this is a minor thing, but it's very important. When Joseph came into the country and he eventually becomes the vizier, it's all over grain. He becomes powerful because of grain. However, he makes Pharaoh all powerful by taking everybody else's money and then their livestock. He takes their animals away from them. Pharaoh owns all of the livestock. And who took care of them? The Israelites. Until now they've got to make bricks without straw. They no longer are tending the animals. This is important. When the Israelites tend the animals, they flourish. Think of Jacob. He's watching his father-in-law, Uncle Whitey's flocks. And anything he does to them, they're multiplying, they're thriving, they all become his. The flocks keep multiplying. Pharaoh puts all of these livestock that are given to him by his people, and he takes them away to feed them. They're cared for by the Israelites, who make them thrive. When the Israelites are removed and put into slavery, I don't need you touching my animals. Now the animals are fair game. They're no longer under the protection of Israel. The God of the Hebrews will not care for them any longer. Let's kill them all. It's a very subtle thing. But you once upon a time had us care for them, and you became rich and powerful when we multiplied your flocks and your herds and all the camels and the donkeys. Now we're not doing it. Let them die. Yes.
And you discussed this last week, in other words, in terms of, realistically speaking, after these bugs attack them,
Well, yes.
livestock would be the next to go.
After livestock, yes. So livestock are going to start getting welts after they've been attacked by lice or flies. Yes, that would be a logical. They do follow a logical sequence to some extent too. So it's also following that. So it's the animals now. Here, Yahweh's hand will be on the livestock of the field, on the horse, on the donkeys, on the camel, on the ox, on the sheep, and exceedingly heavy price. And Yahweh will make a distinction between the livestock of Israel and the livestock of Egypt. There will be no dye among all that belong to the children of Israel, a thing. In other words, none of their animals will die, yours will. God's making a very clear distinction. Israel's okay, Egypt's punished. And now it's public. It's not just, I can't see it because what's going on in your house. This is, all the animals are still out in your field and they're healthy. Mine are dead. When things like that happen, people cry, witch. Get rid of them. Well, this is a fight between gods. So you kind of back up. But they're looking at this, the Egyptians are looking at this and saying, why are we being cursed? Well, Pharaoh, while the Israelites are being blessed. Why are we listening to him? It's starting to undermine his power that was built up in the first place by Joseph. And before they blamed Joseph for taking all of their wealth, now it's going to be Pharaoh. Damn IRS. Then it suddenly becomes the damn government. Now it's the damn government, not the IRS. It's the whole government. It's conspiracy. They're looking at this and realizing Pharaoh can't do anything to protect us, and the animals are gone, so we're doomed. Yahweh set an appointed time, saying, on the morrow, tomorrow, Yahweh will do this thing in the land. Yahweh did that thing on the morrow. All the livestock of Egypt died. They couldn't have all died, by the way.
They're brought up again.
Because they're brought up again in the next plague, yes. But a lot of them die is the implication. They make it very dramatic. They all die.
Yeah.
You know, it's a Donald Trumpism. Like, they're all horrible people, but some are okay. All all the animals are dead, but not all of them because these are still here. But it's an all. They all die. But the livestock of the children of Israel, there died not one. Not one. Pharaoh sent to inquire, and here there had not died of the livestock of the children of Israel even one. But Pharaoh's heart remained heavy with stubbornness, and he did not send the people free. I love this. He doesn't know what's happening in his own kingdom any longer. He has to ask people, can you go check on the Israelites? He used to know everything all the time. Now no one's telling him anything. He has to send spies. Go check their animals out. He's losing control. Yahweh said to Moshe and to Aaron, take yourselves fistfuls of soot from a furnace, and let Moshe toss it heavenward before Pharaoh's eyes. It will become like fine dust on all the land of Egypt, and on all the man and on all the beasts it will become boils, sprouting into blisters throughout all the land of Egypt. So, the question is, do the dead animals get blisters? No. So they're getting boils now. Animal and people. Then he took the soot from the furnace and stood before Pharaoh and tossed it heavenward and became like boil blisters sprouting on man and on beast. Everyone's covered in boils. Now the magicians could not stand before Moshe because of the boils, for the boils were among the magicians and upon all of Egypt. Not only can they not replicate this plague is on them. So the magicians and the priests and all the leaders who are helping Pharaoh now are being victimized by the plagues they were discounting earlier. Because now they've got it. So they have smallpox or whatever they're getting. And they're not happy. Okay, but 12. But Yahweh made Pharaoh's heart strong-willed, and he did not hearken to them. And Yahweh said to Moshe, start early in the morning, station yourself before Pharaoh, and say to him, thus says Yahweh, the God of the Hebrews, send free my people that they may serve me. Again? We're back to this. So we've had all these things. We've got the blisters. We've got dead animals. It's lovely. What are we getting next? Indeed, this time I will send all my blows upon your heart and against your servants and against your people, so that you may know that there is none like me through all the land. This is the point of why so many. Each time it gets bigger. Each time it gets harder. Each time it's building on something before, just beating on them, I'm more powerful than you. Indeed, by now, I could have sent out my hand and struck you and your people with the pestilence, and you would have vanished from the land. There's the warning. If I wanted, you'd all be dead already. But I haven't. This is a power you're messing with you can't control. He goes on. However, just on account of this, I have allowed you to withstand, to make you see my power, and in order that they might recount my name throughout all the land. God's doing this so that people know who God is. No one knows Yahweh. When this is over, everyone knows Yahweh. You don't mess with Yahweh. It's sort of like the skunk. You don't deal with it a lot, but you just stay the hell away from it when it wanders in your yard, because you're going to lose. No one ever wins a fight with a skunk. You're never going to win a fight with God. You're going to walk away stinking. You just are. So God's warning him, don't mess with me. And I've been doing this so you know who I am. But still you set yourself up over my people by not sending them free. Here, around this time tomorrow, I will cause to rain down exceedingly heavy hail, the likes of which has never been in Egypt from the days of its founding until now. So, we've had the dead animals, we have boils, and next, hail. We can deal with hail. It lasts a few minutes. You make an insurance claim on your car. You're fine. No. You're thinking New England hail. Have any of you ever seen hail in Texas? Big hail for us is like that. Down south they laugh at that. That's nothing. Hail in Texas is like a golf ball. Bad hail down south and in the Midwest is huge. Now it's going to come like that. We're getting golf balls and apple-sized chunks of ice hurling down on us from heaven. But tomorrow. So now, send word, give refuge to your livestock and to all that in your fields, all man and beast who are found in the field, who have not been gathered into a house. The hail will come down upon them, and they will die. Who's that warning for?
Israel.
No. Everyone. It doesn't distinguish. Tell everyone in the field, tell everyone with livestock, get them in tomorrow. No one should be out tomorrow. This is like the alarm going off. It's a tornado warning. Get in your basement. And there's always some idiot who's got their iPhone. Oh, look, it's a tornado. You know, and a board goes through their head. It's what natural selection is. They're all being warned. God does not make a distinction there. Just, I will cause town. So send word, give refuge to your livestock. This is to Israel, but it's to everyone. Whoever had awe for the word of God, of Yahweh among Pharaoh's servants, had his servants and his livestock flee into the houses. But whoever did not pay any mind to the word of Yahweh left his servants and livestock out in the field. So now it's a test. Who's going to believe this God who's proven how powerful he is? Suddenly, Egyptians are being given a choice to listen to God or to listen to Pharaoh. Some will listen to Yahweh. Some will listen to Pharaoh. Who wins? Yahweh. Pharaoh's going to lose. If you listen to him and don't listen to the weather forecast, and you go to work, no umbrella, you stay inside till the hail is gone, you're fine. They've been warned to save your life and the lives of your livestock that are still around. Bring them inside. This is different. God has not been giving us warnings up till now that if you do this, you'll be fine. This is setting us up for the law giving later. If you do this, you will live. If you do not, you shall die. The pattern's just been set up here. So for anyone who's God-fearing, does it matter what your nationality is? No. This will be very, very, very important to Christian theologians when they split from Judaism. Anyone who's God-fearing and listens can come in and find life. Come into the house. Come into the church. Oh. They pick up on this. All right, 22. Yahweh said to Moshe, stretch out your hand over the heavens. Let there be hail throughout all the land of Egypt, on man and on beast and on the plants of the field, throughout all the land of Egypt. Moshe stretched out his staff over the heavens, and Yahweh gave forth thunder sounds and hail, and fire went toward the earth, and Yahweh caused hail to rain down upon the land of Egypt. So it's hail and fire. Lightning. It's don't think Cecil B. DeMille where it's like, ooh, look, the hail is burning, you know. And Baxter isn't here. So it's basically lightning and hail. And the lightning is everywhere. It's like fire. And the hail is coming all over, and it's huge. There was hail and fire taking hold of itself amid the hail exceedingly heavily, and the lights of which had never been seen throughout all the land of Egypt since it had become a nation. In their whole history, they've never seen this. The hail struck throughout all the land of Egypt, all that was in the fields, from man to beast. All the plants of the field the hail struck, and the trees of the field it broke down. So now it's the trees and the plants and the animals and the people. Only the region of Goshen, where the children of Israel were, was there no hail. They've been protected. Now, this is interesting. They were given a choice. Bring your animals and people in or leave them out. If they left them out, were they punished? No. The Israelites are not learning the same lesson the Egyptians are. The Israelites think we can get away with breaking the rules because we're shielded. It begins to create a pattern in their mind that's going to play out very soon when they get freed. We don't have to follow the rules like the Egyptians do. Because if I left my people in the field, I got an extra day's work. God never made it hail here. He loves us. So we don't have to listen. It's going to set up a problem in their own history. We're already seeing the seeds of discontent in their plagues. Questions on that?
But Goshen is away from Egypt.
Goshen is part of Egypt, but it's on the edge.
On the edge.
Yeah. Sort of like,
Maine.
well, I was even trying to think more locally, like Cornwall Bridge. There's Connecticut, and there's Cornwall Bridge, you know. No one's really from Connecticut there. They're all New Yorkers, you know. It's sort of like Vermont. They're real Vermonters. They're few and far between. Most of them are transplants from New York who are trying to go country. And you go up there and you're like, this isn't country. This is like, you know, you're walking through cow shit with like designer boots and you've got a latte from Starbucks. You know, your rural is a little off. Goshen is on the edge of everything. It's part of Egypt, but it isn't. It's you know, like Hawaii. It belongs to us, but we don't think about it because it isn't attached. You know, who cares? It's Hawaii. Yeah. Or my favorite thing is, if you're a New Yorker, it's like Brooklyn falling into the sea. You would never notice if you live in Manhattan. My sister was at the opera and a singer dropped dead at the opera into the orchestra pit. Dozens of people in the audience are all taking pictures on their stuff and like calling into the New York Times and all these other, and literally the guy reporting goes, do you know there's a massive fire in Brooklyn and Queens? There was a shooting. But sure, no. Someone dropped dead in the opera. And all of you are so concerned. You only have your little region you care about. Goshen is not considered Egypt to Egyptians. Like Connecticut isn't considered New England to the rest of New England. We're like New York light. We don't count. Bostonians don't count as a part of New England. They don't. And Philadelphia, they think New York's part of New England. Like, what is wrong with you? You know, everybody puts their own things. So Goshen's separate, but here's the problem that happens with this. By separating them and sparing them, God is also showing them, well, if you didn't follow the rules this time, don't worry, they aren't going to hurt you. Well, later they will. So this is going to be interesting.
That's the time element that I'm saying is they didn't have cell phones.
No, they don't have cell
But
phones.
they had, in order to get the word out, and you're talking,
You send a runner.
Send a runner, which you can't do within a day either.
No, you can't do it in a day, and you're doing it in hail.
Yeah, so this is the time element that seems to be a little...
He's on Facebook, and he sees the pictures that are being posted. So, you
I'm
know.
thinking a funny thing happened on the way to the forum where they made Buster Keaton run around the city 10 times. That was Zilling Park. You know, and it
Yeah, but
took forever.
it's the news is spreading like this, but there's no way it could have. But for storytelling purposes, everyone just knows. So the omniscient teller and the omniscient reader helps in storytelling. So. All right, so Pharaoh sent and had Moshe and Aaron called and said to them, this time I have sinned. Woo. Woo. Do you have sinned or do you have something else? Sinned. He claims to sin. No, not again. This is the first time he's ever admitted he sinned again. So which means, he hasn't said it before, but he's saying I've done it again. This becomes an interesting point of contention, the again, because it means Pharaoh knows he's done things that weren't very kind or loving. Like, when we killed all those babies, or when I made people make bricks without straw, or, I wanted to rape all the daughters of Israel, or, I haven't been perfect. But a Pharaoh can't be perfect. But he is admitting that he's sinned, and he knows he's done it before. Which is also telling, because it means not everything that this God-man does is right. The facade's cracked. We see he isn't a God, and we see he's a sinner. And he admits it. He's not saying it in front of anybody else. Just Moses and Aaron. You go talk to your God. You tell him I sinned. Get me out of this. I can't sell grain if it's dead. And we don't have animals to eat because they're dead or covered in boils. So I got a problem. Stop this. I've sinned. He's talking God language. Yahweh is the one in the right, and I and my people are the ones in the wrong. I love that suddenly he's including other people in the decision-making process. It's him. We've been wrong. No, you've been wrong, and your people were dragged into it. Some of them had a chance this time. And then he says, plead with Yahweh, for enough is the God, thunder, and this hail. Let me send you free. Do not continue staying here. Get out of my house. Moshe said to him, as soon as I go out of the city, I will spread out my hands to Yahweh. The thunder will stop and the hail will be no more, in order that you may know that the land belongs to Yahweh. It's not yours. You're ruling, but it isn't yours. And I love this. When he admits he sinned, whether he means it or not, it's another story. We'll get into that. But once he says he sinned, is the timeline tomorrow? It's much quicker. The minute I get out of the city and I can lift my hands up over everything, you'll be spared. I'm not making this go on for another day. Once you're contrite, forgiveness, mercy, they come right away, not tomorrow. It's a great lesson in theology. Mercy comes with contrition. So, but the land belongs to Yahweh. Mine is the land, mine are the animals, mine are the plants. You think you have control over everything, but you can't control any of it, because the stuff you thought you had is dead. Who's in charge? Cry uncle! Uncle! All right. But as for you and your servants, I know well that you do not stand in fear before the face of Yahweh God. Moses knows he's lying. He's either lying to himself, believing this, or he's lying to Moses and God. But he's lying. He's saying one thing, but secretly in his heart is holding on to something else. And Moses knows it. Now the flax and the barley were stricken, for the barley was in ear and the flax were in buds, but the wheat and the spelt were not stricken, for late spring ripening are they. They were flexible and young enough. They've been bent, but they're not destroyed. All the early crops, the flax is gone, the barley. So this means no beer, no linen. Just kill me. I'm living in a desert without linen. Now this is in the age before poly cotton. You wanted linen. You don't want to wear wool in Egypt. You want linen. So there's no linen and there's no beer. kill me.
They know how to make beer.
Yeah. No, as a matter of fact, beer is the cause of civilization. That people gathered it, and it was sitting in a. They found it before they found villages. Beer making stuff in pots. That all the things we make, pottery, crops, buildings, were all originally towards the production of beer. It is our oldest commodity that we make because the alcohol in it preserves it, and the boiling process gets rid of all the bad bacteria in the water, and you keep the good stuff that helps you digest. Beer is one of the origins of why we have civilization today. Beer. Who knew? It's beer. So there's no barley and no flax. I'm going to the Czech Republic. I'm sorry. I can wear wool there, and they have beer. Get me out of here. So, Moshe went out from Pharaoh outside the city and spread out his hands to Yahweh, and the thunder and the hail stopped, and the rain no longer poured down on the earth. But when Yahweh saw that the rain and the hail and the thunder had stopped, he continued to sin. Ooh. He made his heart heavy with stubbornness, his and his servants. I love how he can make their hearts harden. Pharaoh's heart remained strong-willed, and he did not send the children of Israel free as Yahweh had spoken through Moses. They already knew this. And I love that he continued sinning. In other words, he knows he's wrong, but he's doubling down. I'd rather lock into being wrong and fight than to give in and let somebody else be right. Ugh. I'm sure you've never known anyone like this in your life. If only you were the only one. Okay. So, we've already been told where this is going. The wheat is still alive. Well, that's where their real money is. So next, Pharaoh's going to get hit in his pocketbook. This is before insurance. Yahweh said to Moshe, "Come to Pharaoh, for I have made his heart and the heart of his servants heavy with stubbornness, in order that I may put these signs among them." So God's saying, I did it. Okay. You have to be in charge, all right? "And in order that you may recount in the ears of your children and your children's children how I have been capricious with Egypt and my signs which I have placed among them, that you may know that I am Yahweh." There's the real answer. Why so many plagues? So you can laugh about how horrible and stupid the Egyptians were and how they were my playthings. Egypt was just a toy, and I played them. And you can laugh at them, and you can tell your children and your grandchildren how awful they were, and how I was always in charge. It's a weird thing to say if you're God. Well, but it's what you want to hear when you've been constantly oppressed by these people. You want to see that they're being oppressed, and then some. So the audience isn't us, it isn't the Egyptians, it's the Israelites who are being oppressed. They're the audience for this statement. Moshe and Aaron came to Pharaoh and they said, "Thus says Yahweh, the God of the Hebrews, how long will you refuse to humble yourself before me? Send free my people that they may serve me." There's an extra line. How long will you refuse to humble yourself? He admitted he sinned, but he hasn't stopped. That's like if your spouse says, "Honey, I've been having an affair," and when it's over. Whoa, 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 whoa. When? Hello, lawyer. Pharaoh's just doubling up. And now God's saying, you have to humble yourself. You're going to grovel now. You've admitted you're a sinner, but you didn't stop. So, but if you refuse to send my people free here on the morrow, I will bring the locust horde into your territory. He's given a choice, by the way, if my people are gone before tomorrow. This is also unusual. It says, if you refuse to send my people here on the morrow, I will bring into the horde of locusts, a locust horde into your territory. If they're gone by tomorrow, the implication is the locusts don't come. Pharaoh's given a chance to preemptively act on the good of his people and his pocketbook. He has a warning. He has a day. Let him go. Who could get rid of them in a day? When they're gone in a day. When you really want to get rid of someone quickly, you will. You know. So, they will cover the aspect of the ground so that one will not be able to see the ground. They will consume what is left of what escaped, of what remains for you from the hail. And they will consume all the trees that spring up for you from the field. So they're going to take everything that wasn't already destroyed and eat it. And it will be so many of them, you won't see dirt. You'll only see locusts. We're not used to seeing this in the modern age in this country. We haven't had locusts like this since pesticides. There are places in the world where locusts come in and they devour everything and they fly away. It's horrifying. And they will fill your houses and the houses of your servants and the houses of all of Egypt, as neither your fathers nor your fathers' fathers have seen from the day of their being upon the soil until this day. He turned and went out from Pharaoh. The warning is yours. Tick tock, tick tock, tick tock. Pharaoh's servant said to him, how long shall this one be a snare to us? Why is he here? And then they go on. Send the men free that they may serve Yahweh their God. Do you not yet know that Egypt is lost? Mm-hmm. Now they're saying there's no way we can win. Just let them go. These are his advisors. Remember, before they were going, I can do that trick with the stick or the water in my sleep. Next, they're covered in boils and they can't come out in public. Now they're saying, Pharaoh, it's lost. Just let them leave before we all die and lose what little we have. The grain that will feed us, and we can sell and start to build ourselves back up again. Just let him go. It's Egyptians pleading against Egyptians. Remember what Pharaoh did to the Israelites in the beginning? He started turning the leaders of the Israelites against Moses and his people, and they turned against Moses. He played them all off of each other so that they themselves were fighting amongst themselves. God's plagues are making the Egyptians fight amongst themselves. Pharaoh and his advisors and the people in the fields are now all fighting. They've divided. Pharaoh's created on himself what he wished to inflict on Israel, which will tell you where the plagues are going. As your sons will die, we know where the story is going to go. So, Egypt's lost. Moshe and Aaron were returned to Pharaoh, and he said, go, serve Yahweh your God. Who is it? Who is it that would go? You can leave, but I need to know who's going with you. What? Moshe said, with our young ones, with our elders we will go, with our sons, with our daughters, with our sheep and our oxen we will go, for it is Yahweh's pilgrimage festival for us. We go with everyone and everything. That's who's going. he said to them, "May Yahweh be thus with you." I love that expression. May Yahweh be thus with you. "The same as I mean to send you free along with your little ones. You see, yes, your faces will set toward us ill. Now thus go, O males, and serve Yahweh, for it is you really seek. They will be driven out from Pharaoh's face." In other words, the men may go, but the women stay. And their kids. This is what he wanted from the beginning anyway, and his father before him. The men need to leave, the women stay as servants. Is this going to go over well? No. Pharaoh thinks he's in a position to bargain here. He's in control. He thinks he's still in control. He doesn't even rule the land on which he's standing. God's already pointed that out. And if you want to see that, just wait till the locusts come and devour everything. So he's saying, get out. Yahweh said to Moshe, "Stretch out your hand over the land of Egypt for the locust horde." We know where this is going. He's not going to let you go tonight. "And it will ascend over the land of Egypt, consuming all the plants of the land, all that the hail allowed to remain." So whatever lives through that last plague is gone now. Moshe stretched out his staff over the land of Egypt, and Yahweh led in an east wind against the land, and all day and all night, when it was morning, the east wind had borne in the locust horde. The locust horde ascended over all the land of Egypt, and it came to rest upon all the territory of Egypt, exceedingly heavy. But if there was no such locust horde as it, and after it will be no such again, never before has it been this bad. It covered the aspect of the ground, and the ground became dark. It consumed all the plants of the land and all the fruit of the trees that the hail had left. Nothing at all green was left on the trees and of the plants of the field throughout all the land of Egypt. It's gone. This isn't crushed. This is devoured. Nothing is green. Nothing is green in a desert landscape. It's just dust. It's just dirt and dust and hordes of locusts. Quickly Pharaoh had Moshe and Aaron called and said, "I have sinned against Yahweh, your God, and against you." Suddenly I'm sinning against you too. "So now, pray bear my sin just this one time." Once? God, we're way beyond one sin. "And plead with Yahweh, your God, that he may only remove this death from me." I love that he says it this way. Plead with your God. Your little stupid God.
It's easier to have a capital or a lowercase g.
It's an uppercase. "And that he may remove this death from me." You don't give God ideas. That's like telling Jesus, "And who's my neighbor?" You don't give him the chance. You don't put this out there that please remove this death from me. Fine, I'll give you another death. And he still refuses, and this is the great sin. He still refuses to acknowledge that God is his God. Pharaoh still wants to be God when this God's gone. He's holding on to his own divinity. He won't let it go. And so he says, pray to your God. Not my God, your God. God has made it perfectly clear, I'm in control here. Don't mess with me. You'd think you'd want in on that God. No, he's still arm's length from it. He went out from Pharaoh and pleaded with Yahweh. Yahweh reversed an exceedingly strong sea wind, which bore the locusts away and dashed them into the sea of reeds. Not one locust remained through all the territory of Egypt. You all have that?
Yeah.
Into the Sea of Reeds?
Yes.
Red Sea. It's really the Sea of Reeds. It's a mistranslation. The Sea of Reeds, they all come crashing in this swampy, marshy, and they die. They're just drowned in the Sea of Reeds. All of them die. God's trying to tell Pharaoh something. Don't go to the Sea of Reeds unless you want to die. You aren't getting out of there alive. If I killed locusts, I can kill you. It's all being set up. And Yahweh made Pharaoh's heart strong-willed and did not send the children of Israel free. Again! Oh my God! How stupid can you be? I know that we complain about politicians today, but I think most of our politicians by Plague 8 would have at least said, just go. Just go. I don't want to fill out the paperwork. Yahweh said to Moshe, stretch out your hand over the heavens and let there be darkness over the land of Egypt. They will feel darkness. Moshe stretched out his hand over the heavens, and there was gloomy darkness throughout all the land of Egypt for 3 days. Some have believed that the scientific explanation is with all the plants gone, it's nothing but a dust bowl. And like the dust bowl here, you get these clouds of dust. Some people believe that the darkness is a dust storm that won't stop. That's the scientific explanation. The theological one is God made the light, God can take the light away. A man could not see his brother, a man could not arise from his spot for 3 days. But all the children of Israel, there was light in their settlements. It's a pretty good trick. But remember, God made light before he made the sun. So he can make light shine wherever he wants, whenever he wants, even without a sun. So there's light there, because he likes them. So, Pharaoh had Moshe called and said, go, serve Yahweh. Only your sheep and your oxen shall be kept. Even your little ones may go with you. So now you can take your wives and your brats. But the cows and the sheep stay here. Remember, he's got nothing left. I need your sheep. I really want a steak. So, he's trying everything to make it look like he's winning. Anything. Any little contingent. Moshe said, you must also give slaughter offerings and offerings up to your hands so that we may sacrifice them to Yahweh for our God. How are we going to have a sacrifice without the animals? How do you have a barbecue without the cow? Pharaoh, tell me. Even our livestock must go with us. Not a hoof must remain behind. For some of them we must take to serve Yahweh our God. We do not know how we are to serve Yahweh until we come there. We don't know what he's putting on the menu. We got to bring everything. This isn't just go to the kitchen and open the pantry if you don't like what's there. You got to bring it all with you. It's a great line. I also love this image. Only a few chapters ago, who am I to go and speak before Pharaoh, for I stutter? Now he's there like, we're taking our cows and our sheep and our donkeys. The hell with you. Union. They are striking and we're not giving in. Moses went from cowering before Pharaoh to realizing God's got my back. I have nothing to fear from this guy, and he's pathetic. And I'm going to keep pushing till we get everything. You've taken 400 years from us. We made you who and what you are. And you've treated us like garbage. And even when you were given a chance to let us go, your stubbornness and your pride wouldn't let you. And now you're trying to hold on to any little thing just to make it look like you won. You're lost. I know you've lost. Your advisors know you lost. Yahweh knows you lost. Your people know you lost. The cows know you lost. Everybody knows you've lost. But you. And what do you do when you lose? Lock in. I'm not an addict. I don't have a problem. You have a... Cut it out! Everyone you loved is left. You have no money. Look at you, you're dying. What the hell is wrong? I'm fine. Pharaoh is the addict. He will not admit defeat. He'll say he sinned when he wants to get out of something, but then he'll back out of that statement. I never said it in the first place. He's trying to hold on to anything. Just give me some cows. But Yahweh made Pharaoh's heart strong-willed so that he would not consent to send them free. Pharaoh said to him, "Go from me. Be on your watch. You are not to see my face again, for on the day that you see my face, you shall die. I never want to see you again." Well, if you're living in his territory, how are you going to hide from him? The only way anyone's getting out of this is death. Again, why do you keep bringing up death? You're just giving God ideas. He was thinking, I'm going to mess up your Amazon delivery and they're going to send it to the Assyrians. But no, this is much better. I'm going to kill him. Moshe said, "You have spoken well. I will not henceforth see your face again." We will never see each other again. Again, just remember for one moment what's going on in that room. Who is there? Pharaoh? Moses. This is made out to be this huge, there are so many levels going on here. It's this fight between gods, the real God of all things and the God who thinks he's in charge of everything and is in charge of nothing. But it's also a family fight. Moses is the adopted kid who never really belonged. And now that kid is turning out to be able to whoop the one who gets everything. And in like any family fight, I never want to see you again until the day you die. Who do you fight ugliest with? Your family. Other people after a while are like, I never need to see this person again. You need to see your family. This is family. And they've just told each other, we will never see each other alive again. From the day I see you, you're going to die. Okay. How's that going to work out for you? Chapter 11. Yahweh said to Moshe, "I will cause one more blow. One final punishment. One final fight. To come upon Pharaoh and upon Egypt. Afterward, he will send you free from here. When he sends you free, it is finished. He will drive you out from here. He's not only going to let you go, he's going to kick you out. He won't want you anywhere near him again. He will go from holding on to every last thing for dear life to get out and never come back again. Pray, speak in the ears of the people." That's his people, not the Egyptians. "They shall ask each man of his neighbor, each woman of her neighbor, objects of silver and objects of gold." Ooh. Ooh. Ka-ching, payday. And Yahweh gave the people favor in the eyes of Egyptians, while the man Moshe was considered exceedingly great in the land of Egypt, and the eyes of Pharaoh's servants, and the eyes of his people. So everybody in Egypt except for Pharaoh sees Moses as powerful and believable. What he says happens. What Pharaoh says, we laugh at.
Why is he asking for silver and gold?
Yeah.
Because they have nothing left in Egypt. There's no cattle. There's no grain. All they've got is silver and gold. And the point is, if they want to get rid of us, now you're paying. Think of it as reparations. You're paying us for the slavery. You're paying us for the damage you've inflicted. You're paying us to get away from you. Because we're going to take your gold. What matters more than gold? To some people, no. Gold matters more than anything. Especially to Egyptians. It's not me alive that matters. It's me dead. Again, I can relate. Again, Irish people, we love death. You're dead longer than you're ever alive. So if you're a pharaoh, I need stuff. Don't put me in that box without my stereo and the car and my microwave and snacks. And what's he going to be decked out in? Gold. Why gold? It's not just he had a lot of it. Silver's okay, but gold in Egypt.
Never tarnishes.
Gold never rots, it never tarnishes, it's forever. Gold to the Egyptians is the skin of God. God's skin is gold. Their images are gilded because they do not corrode or rot. We're giving you the eternity that we hold on to our gods, and it's leaving with the real God's people. So the stuff of the gods is really being taken out of Egypt. It's a great image. Yes.
Also, historically for that time, gold was gold standard, but it was also easily transportable.
Yeah.
And whoever the women would wear the gold.
Yes.
So you could just put it on your skirt or whatever.
Well, you wore that because that was your dowry.
Yeah.
And if your husband died, you lived off the gold you wore and they gave you away. That's in most cultures. But the real wealth, this is the irony, the real wealth was cattle. Real wealth was cattle. Gold bought you cattle. Gold was something precious, but cattle was a sign that you had made it. And they're dead. All we have is gold. We only have the gold and we only have the silver. And now we're just going to give it away to the Israelites to get them to leave. You're paying them to leave. You wouldn't let them go in the first place. Now you're paying them to leave.
Yeah.
It's sort of like your kids. At one point, you never want them to leave your sight. And then at another point, you're like, for the love of God, I'll buy you a house and a car and vacation. Just go! Leave my house. It's that kind of thing. They've gotten sick of the Israelites. We're going to pay you to leave. That's what's happening. We'll pay you to leave. And as people who've been so oppressed, they're going to tell this story to their kids. We didn't just get to leave as slaves. We left with gold and silver and cattle and camels. We left with all the wealth that was left in that country. And they were left dying and starving. Well, Mommy, how did the Egyptians revive and become the most powerful nation on earth again? Shut up! Don't ask questions. But the story goes, we took everything they had. And that's the story they're telling. So here we are. 4.
She has a question.
Yes,
Okay, this says instruct your people that every man is to ask his neighbor, and every woman her neighbor for silver and gold. But it's not clear who's saying that. Is it
God's saying it to Moses to tell to the Israelites. God's saying, tell all the people, the men ask your neighbors, the women ask your neighbors, go and get the gold. The women are going to have more luck with this, by the way, because they speak the common language and they know each other from going to the well. The men have not been dealing with each other, but the women have. So what the men can't get, which is a lot, the women will find. Because the ladies know where stuff is hidden. That the men, even in your own house, honestly, women, do you generally know where every kitchen gadget is? Do your husband even know what the thing is? Like, what is this? It's a potato peeler. Well, what is it? It peels potatoes. Well, where does it go? In the third drawer. Like, you know, my father just leaves stuff on the counter, and I have to go home and put everything away because he doesn't know where anything belongs. Thank you for doing the dishes, but learn where they go. So he's going here. But that's why. It's the men and the women will find out everything. Moshe said, "Thus says Yahweh, in the middle of the night, I will go forth through the midst of Egypt." By the way, the last plague was darkness. We've never heard it lifted. It says, we don't know whether this is at the end of the 3 days or they suddenly had light. But before they're killed, they're cast into darkness. Because if they're in darkness, they cannot see. They cannot see God's hand. They cannot see the God who's real. They don't know what to do. They're just sitting there waiting for something to happen. And the something waiting to happen is death. So we're not sure if light comes or not, but they brilliantly leave that stage setting out, because if light came back before this happened, it would be anticlimactic. You want them cowering in darkness and then dying. Because God now has taken the last bit of creation, light, and shown them, I control this too. No one else controls the light. I do. And I control life. That's his last bit. Yes?
The way this is written is a little different, isn't it, from some of the other places that the Lord said, I will do this.
Yes.
And so forth. This doesn't say that. It goes right into Moses then said that the Lord said such and such.
Well, God said he'll cause one more strike.
He did that, right?
And now Moses has to tell you what it is. Because Moses knows without having to be told. Sort of like Joseph was able to interpret the dream without God telling him. For the first time ever, Moses knows what God is going to do before God tells him. So it starts to tell us their relationship has changed. He's starting to understand the mind of God. From a God he didn't know to now, this is his God, this is his friend, this is his partner. That gave him strength to stand up and laugh at Pharaoh. And now he knows what God's going to do without being told. So it does show you he's really come into his own as a being with and for God.
Okay, now that you said that, I understand this.
Now you get it. It's a weird detail that you're looking for, and suddenly realize, but Joseph was never told what the dream meant, and he just knew. Moses now just knows, because God says the last blow is coming. Moses just knows what it is.
This is the difficulty that I had. Was it Moses or was it God?
Well, that is the confusion. Because at a certain point, well, it's sort of like when you see people who are really close friends, or a couple that's really got it all together, when you speak to one of them, you're speaking to both. Some people, especially children, again, children are brilliant at finding the crack and driving away. Like, I want a cookie, Mommy. No. Daddy, I want a cookie. Well, what'd your mother say? Yes. Then I have a cookie. You know, you don't get in trouble. The parents start screaming at each other. Couples that have it together, or friends that are really like close, if you speak to one, you speak to the other. You know what the united front answer is going to be. In this case, we've suddenly gotten to the point where you can leave it vague. We know it's God speaking if Moses is saying it, because they've suddenly melded. And Aaron, who was the mouthpiece up front, has backed off somewhat, because He doesn't need the mouthpiece. He's come into his own. Yes, I have a speech impediment, but it works to my advantage to taunt Pharaoh. Like, what are you going to do? You know? He's stuttering the words out, just antagonizing Pharaoh now. I don't need the mouthpiece. I've got God. So there is a vagueness in it, but because by this point in the story, Moses and God are very, very close, and to speak to one is almost as if you're speaking to the other.
So at the end of the ninth plague, they essentially say that they're not going to see each other unless you're dead.
Yeah.
The 10th doesn't really go in the same pattern where
It's totally different.
right. So you don't have God saying to Moses to tell Pharaoh, because there is no there doesn't seem to be a conversation with Pharaoh.
Because Pharaoh's by the time of the 10th plague, I don't need to ever speak to Pharaoh again. He has said, get out.
So that seems
Well, that's like, again, you kicked my wife out, you kicked me out. You don't want her in? I'm not coming over either. You get both of us or none. He's kicked out Moses. God's not going to speak to Pharaoh again. How's he going to do it? He's not going to send Aaron. We're done speaking to Pharaoh. He doesn't listen. He plays the game. He tells us what we think we want to hear. Done. So what God is doing in the 10th plague is he goes directly to his own. He goes directly to the children of Israel and says, here's what's going to happen. And what's unique about this one is it's not like, oh, tomorrow or instantly. There's a lag. Because for the first time, God's response is going to depend on the human reaction. God knew he was never going to get a real reaction out of Pharaoh. He was never really going to let us go. He'll say he is, he isn't. This time he's going to give Israel a job. You need to do these things. Go ask your neighbors for gold. Go get yourselves a lamb. Go do this, go do this, go do this, go do this. They have to go through a series of actions to show we're listening and we're following instructions. So it does break the pattern because this plague is not a warning to Egypt any longer. It's a test to see if Israel's been listening. Has Israel learned who God is? Because again, they didn't know who he was either. So this is God checking to see if I tell you to do something, how well are you going to respond? So the 10th plague has nothing to do with Pharaoh or the Egyptians. It's going to hit them, but it's really aimed entirely at the Israelites. It is an excellent question. It's so out of the ordinary. It breaks every mold, but because it is a plague that breaks every other mold. It's not like, it's not like, oh, a cloud comes over and darkens things, and it's not like, oh, hail is falling. It's children are just dying. People are dying. And there's no reason why they should be dying. How is it? And it's just instantaneous. But the people who followed certain things that we didn't know about, how did they get the bonus question? Where were we when that lecture was given? You weren't included because you kicked us out. You didn't want to be part of the discussion anymore. Fine. You really needed to hear this one. This is the lecture that if you missed it, you failed the class. Sorry. Yes.
That makes sense because it's very possible that the Lord spared them the flies, the hail, the livestock to show the the Israelites that he was going to take care of them. If he hadn't done that, they were mad. Before that, they were mad at Moses.
Well, no,
done the blood thing.
The irony is, he didn't spare them for them. When they were spared in the previous plagues, God was showing Pharaoh, if you belong to me, I leave you alone. If you don't, you suffer. So those messages weren't to Israel themselves. They were hopefully learning a lesson,
Right.
but the message was to Egypt. This time it's reversed. The message is to Israel. Egypt is external. So whether or not they get on board with this, I don't know. But the message is to the Israelites. The 10th plague is completely different because there's no warning. You're not speaking to Pharaoh. It's not addressed to Egypt. It's addressed to Israel.
But if the Israelites did not believe that God would do this, they would not have slaughtered the
Well, but that's another. But
Yeah.
that's the point. But that's God checking up now on. Okay, you're the kid who wasn't in trouble, but you still need to go to bed, or you're still eating your broccoli. You're not, you're not breaking into the neighbor's house and stealing their television, but you're not listening to me either. You test kids where they are. Well, God is now going to check on Israel before they leave. Are they learning who I am and that what I say goes? Egypt, the irony is Egypt as a whole began to learn that lesson. Pharaoh doesn't. But the problem is Pharaoh speaks for them. So if the person speaking for you can't be trusted, you're all doomed. Israel, Moses is speaking for you. He can be trusted. So even when you screw up, the one who can be trusted has a little bit of pull. Questions? All right, so we were on, where were we? 4. Moses said, "Thus says Yahweh, in the middle of the night I will go forth through the midst of Egypt." Ooh, that's never good. "And every firstborn shall die throughout the land of Egypt, from the firstborn of Pharaoh who sits on the throne, to the firstborn of the maid who is behind the handmill, to every firstborn of beasts. All the oldest children are going to die." Firstborn.
See, this is brings beast up again.
They should be dead, I know.
It's,
Yeah. That's why you got to take these always with a grain of salt, because there shouldn't be any crops left. How they make the bread? There shouldn't be any cattle left. How do they ride the chariots out after them? The horses should all be dead. You take it all with a grain of salt. All is like a political all. Everybody hates you. No, my people hate you. It's that kind of thing. It's sort of like when someone walks up to you at work and says, everybody's talking about you. Okay, what do you say? It's you, and you're dumping this on everyone else. Every animal being dead, it sounds dramatic, but they can't all be dead. So there's still some of them, and now they're going to die again. They're dying on top of, or they're zombies. Either way, I don't know. So, 6. "Then shall there be a cry throughout the land of Egypt, the likes of which have never been, the likes of which will never be again. But against all the children of Israel, no dog shall even sharpen its tongue against either man or beast, in order that you may know that Yahweh makes distinction between Egypt and Israel." The dogs aren't going to come and devour you. It's a great image. Thank you. In the desert, jackals come and eat dead bodies. So, ew. And the more dead you have, the less precise you are in burying. So you skip corners so they get dug up. Great. "Then all of these your servants shall go down to me. They shall bow to me, saying, 'Go out, you and all the people who walk in your footsteps, and afterward I will go out.' He went out from Pharaoh in flaming anger." Pharaoh is furious with Moses, and Moses is furious with Pharaoh. They despise each other. They leave each other absolutely convinced the other one's a total jackass. who's irredeemable. They've both pushed each other's buttons to such a state, we've reached a point we have to go for the nuclear option. There's gonna be no negotiation from this point forward. None. Yahweh said to Moshe, Pharaoh will hearken to you in order that my portents may be in the land of Egypt. Suddenly he's going to start listening. Now Moshe and Aaron had done all the portents in Pharaoh's presence, but Yahweh had made Pharaoh's heart strong-willed, and he had set the children of Israel free from the land. So, we're setting them up. There's going to be one last contest, but we don't get it yet. The pattern's broken. The relationship between Moses and Pharaoh has broken down completely. God has reached the threshold of pain. I'm not negotiating any longer. And this guy has made it all about, you want to see me? Someone's going to die? Fine. It's going to be death. And it's going to be your children and your animals, and my people will live. If you think you have the power over life and death, I will show you who has the power over life and death. And it's going to be the firstborn. The precious firstborn. Obviously, you are not the oldest in your family. Those of us who are not the oldest look at this and say, yeah, they deserve it. They're entitled. They think they boss everyone around. The firstborn inherits everything. The firstborn gets everything. There's actually a scientific explanation of what happens. I love this one. Customarily, the firstborn, child and animal alike, especially sons, firstborn sons, daughters you don't count. Let's just get this straightened out. It's the firstborn son, because the daughters are just practices. So, the firstborn son, the prince, the heir apparent, in all things gets a double portion. So when you get dinner, the firstborn eats first, and he eats twice. He does. Animals and beasts, people alike. Now, if the food they've hastily gathered that's been covered with locust droppings has been gathered up to give them anything to eat and put in these baskets, it produces a neurotoxin. Yes. So the food on top is producing a toxin that they get a double serving of and kills them. Whereas the lower people might get sick, but the toxin hasn't gone the mold hasn't sunk all the way to the bottom. So the oldest ones die. This is an interesting explanation of this scientifically. That could be. It's a scientific explanation because scientists want to explain everything. Either way, what it is the real reason, the idea is your firstborn is going to be the strongest because they're like the vigor of your youth. You've been just like chomping at the bit to like, let me out there. And you, hey, baby, come here. And, so you got a lot of built up energy before that one. And then by the third or fourth, you're too tired to care. It's like, I don't know, your name is, Woodpile. I don't know. Like the first one gets the best name and the best hair and clothes and everything. The later ones are like, you'll play with dirt and you'll like it. There was a belief culturally, not even just in Egypt, but across the board. The firstborn, especially a firstborn son, but the firstborn has this vigor of youth, the fullness of life that the other children don't get. Well, if God's going to strike dead to show his power, he's going to strike the one with the most life, the one with the most to lose. That if I am the author of life, I'll take it away from the one who has the fullness of it. That's why God picks the oldest. That and because, the oldest is a jerk. Speaking as the seventh.
Yeah.
Speaking as the seventh, sorry, Anne. Speaking as the seventh, the oldest is kind of bossy jerk. And the others are all like, yeah, die. But why this will also hit home the most is Pharaoh can't run from it, and his heir is dead. The one who will inherit after I'm gone, the continuance of my power, is dead. And just like I killed their sons, their God has killed mine. Ooh, that's where we're going with this. But because this is so heavy, and because it's aimed at Israel, the pattern changes. So for the next 2 chapters, it's going to be this unraveling of what this plague is. We're told at the oldest what's happening, how are we going to escape this, there's got to be something. They're given something to do. And a people who have no ritual, no worship, no temples are suddenly given a worship act to do. Their first worship act as a community is the Passover dinner. The actions involved in this dinner are their oldest liturgical action. It's our oldest liturgical action as a church too. Mass is taken from it. The idea of this meal being religious. There's not a temple. There's a sacrifice, but it isn't. It's weird. Is it a sacrifice or is it just getting ready for dinner? You know, it's a weird sort of thing. It's a homegrown religion, and it still takes place. The primary celebration of Passover isn't in the synagogue. It's at your dinner table. The Seder. It starts with that. All other rituals will build on what we're going to see in the next 2 chapters. That includes Christianity and Islam. They all begin from this moment. God's got to spell something out to them and see how well you're going to listen, and let me give you something to do. How to put this? When the rest of the world is going to hell in a handbasket, what are you going to do to focus your energies and attentions to stick together to give you an identity that's apart from them, other than being, we're the people whose kids didn't die? That's not going to carry you very far. Because what happens when one of your kids does? But if you do this action and you remember what it was about, now I'm taking part in it, and I remember this God who can fight and even kill chooses to give me life, and chooses to bless me, and give me a home, and give me food, and give me a family, and give me a community to which I belong. That's what the ritual will be about. Make sense? Questions? Yes.
The Exodus, the emigration,
Yeah.
isn't recorded other than in the book. Are any of the plagues or a pattern of plagues? No.
They're not unheard of. I mean, the river being transformed into something polluted by like a red cliff collapsing up in Kush happened. The clouds, clouds of sand and dust blocking out the sky for days on end, that happened. Locusts coming in happened. Boils, all of these things happened. It's the intensity of them happening and the sequencing of them, that it's just one after another, after another, after another. But then you get something so focused as death. And it's not an invading army came in that we get. It's not a plague in the sense of the Black Death or cholera or scarlet fever, something where you're not quite sure which one of us is going to live and which one of us is going to die. This is a focused, laser-like attack on the oldest. a specific individual in each house who's considered the vigor, the fullness, the best these people have to produce, is being wiped out. That can't be explained very easily. And so, yeah, did other natural disasters happen there and in other places on earth? Yes. But there's something about this Passover where the oldest are dying everywhere except in this one community. That's really weird. That has no other precedence. We have precedents of armies coming in. We have precedents of people sneaking into other people's homes and murdering. We have precedents of just death coming in on some sort of plague. Those things happen. You're dying of measles. You're dying of this. But it was never so, if everyone in your house got measles and only the ones who died were, and every person in the entire neighborhood were the oldest child.
That'd be weird.
That'd be weird. Now imagine the whole country, every neighborhood gets together and you all suddenly realize, gee, was always the oldest kid who died. That seems a little more than a coincidence. That's the hand of a God at work.
Right. And that's why he did it.
Well, yes.
Because you could lose a father, a mother,
You
and
could
a
lose,
firstborn theoretically.
well, theoretically, yes. You
Yeah.
could lose a lot. So. Or worse, you could use your dog. Forget mom and dad and my brother, but the dog died.
He was the firstborn. Darn it.
Other questions? All right, we'll see you next week and do the Passover.